British airliner disintegrated at 35,000 feet, and investigators found something in the wreckage that shouldn't exist, a meteorite embedded in the fuselage. May 24, 1965, British European Airways Flight 706 was cruising over the English Channel at 35,000 feet, 123 souls on board. Then, without warning, the aircraft simply broke apart. Witnesses on the ground reported seeing a brilliant flash streak across the sky, not a normal lightning strike, but something faster, something from elsewhere. The wreckage scattered across the water and the French coastline. What investigators would recover from that debris field would challenge everything they thought they knew about aviation safety. Let me rewind. This was 1965, the jet age in full bloom. Commercial aviation had become routine, almost mundane. Planes were safer than ever. Accidents were rare, and when they happened, they had explanations: pilot error, mechanical failure, weather. The rulebook was written. Everyone knew the rules. Flight 706 departed from Gatwick at 1350 local time, bound for Palma de Mallorca, a routine shuttle. The Vickers Vanguard turboprop was a reliable workhorse, nothing glamorous but dependable. The flight was climbing through a clear sky, visibility perfect, no storms in the forecast, no mechanical warnings. The crew was experienced. By all accounts, it was a textbook flight. At 14:09, radar contact was lost. The aircraft vanished from screens. Within minutes, distress calls came in from the coastline. The Vanguard had come down. Pieces were floating in the channel and scattered across the cliffs near Margate. The response was immediate: rescue vessels, Coast Guard cutters, police. But there would be no survivors to rescue. The investigation began almost before the wreckage was recovered. The Air Accidents Investigation Branch, the ARIB, assembled teams of engineers, metallurgists, and aeronautical specialists. This was their job: to find the needle in the haystack, to isolate the single factor that had brought a perfectly functioning aircraft out of the sky. The first hypothesis, structural failure. Had the fuselage cracked? Had a fatigue fracture propagated? The engineers examined every recovered fragment with obsessive care. And here, this telegram right here documents the moment they found something odd. The fracture patterns didn't match known failure modes. The metal hadn't simply torn apart from stress. What they found was a hole, not a crack, a hole, a perfectly circular perforation through the aluminum skin of the fuselage. The edges were beveled inward as if something had punched through from outside, something traveling at tremendous velocity, something that had then continued through the interior structure, severing hydraulic lines and control systems. One hole, that was all it took. The question became, what creates a hole like that? What object traveling at such speed leaves such a distinctive signature? Sabotage was considered, a missile, an explosion from within, but the trajectory, the angle of entry, the composition of the hole itself, none of it fit those scenarios. Then one investigator, and I wish I had his name here for you, but the records are sparse on this particular detail, suggested something that seemed almost absurd. What if it wasn't human-made? What if it came from space? The room went quiet, but the more they examined the evidence, the more the hypothesis held weight. A meteorite, that was their conclusion. A piece of ancient cosmic debris no larger than a fist, traveling at approximately 50,000 miles per hour. The odds of such a collision were astronomical, literally. The probability was so remote that actuaries had never bothered calculating it, and yet it had happened. But here's where the story gets complicated. The official report, released months later, made no mention of the meteorite theory. The ARIB concluded the cause was unknown. They cited structural failure but couldn't pinpoint a mechanism. It was inconclusive, frustratingly so. Why the silence? Theories abound. Some suggest the meteorite hypothesis was considered too fantastical for public consumption. Others point to insurance complications. How do you classify a cosmic impact? Is it an act of God, an unseen hazard? The liability questions alone were staggering. Better perhaps to leave it unsolved. The meteorite itself, if it existed, was never publicly recovered or displayed. Whether it was lost in the debris, misidentified, or simply set aside, we may never know. What we do have are the fragments of evidence, the circumstantial case, and the strange silence that followed. The 123 people aboard Flight 706 were never officially told they were killed by a space rock. Their families received no explanation, just cause unknown. The aircraft was forgotten almost immediately. Aviation moved forward. New planes were built. New routes opened. The accident became a footnote. What makes this case remarkable isn't just the meteorite theory, it's the gap between evidence and explanation. We live in an age of transparency, of open investigation, of documented procedures. But in 1965, some truths were simply filed away. Some mysteries were left unsolved by design. The irony is exquisite, isn't it? We spend billions on aviation safety, on redundant systems, fail-safes, engineering margins. And yet the one threat no one could engineer against, the one hazard that fell literally from the heavens, went unacknowledged. Flight 706 reminds us that sometimes no amount of preparation can protect you from what you never saw coming. The case file remains open, technically. New researchers occasionally revisit the evidence. Meteorite impacts on aircraft remain vanishingly rare. Some argue they've never happened since. Others quietly point to Flight 706 and wonder. We may never know the full truth, but standing here looking at what remains, the evidence speaks clearly enough. Sometimes the most improbable explanation is the only one that fits. Subscribe for a new unsolved aviation mystery every week, where the truth is often stranger than the official explanation.